Good evening, I'm Pia Ranada, and this is In the Running, Rappler's daily run-through of the highlights of today's filing of certificates of candidacy for the 2022 elections. Today is day 5 of the COC filing, Tuesday, October 5. The filing of COCs will run until October 8 at the Sofitel Hotel in Pasay. And this show will also run every night until October 8 at 7 p.m. Joining us today as analysts will be Rappler Regional Head Inday Espina-Varona and Rappler reporters Lian Buwan, Mara Cepeda, Dwight De Leon, and Delphine Joquino. Joining us tonight is Rappler's Justice reporter Lian Buwan, who follows Bongbong Marcos. Lian, si Bongbong held the blessing of his headquarters this afternoon, but more than that, no, he announced his intention to run for president. What can you tell us about that announcement?
Well, Pia, it was a very roller coaster ride for all of us covering him no ngayong umaga. Kasi since last week, hindi namin alam kung mag-a-announce ba siya, kung ano yung i-announce niya. But earlier this morning, he posted a photo of him taking an oath with Partido Federal ng Pilipinas. So that came as a surprise because we know him to be with Nacionalista Party. And then they would confirm that chairman na rin siya ng PFP. So that indicated na baka tatakbo kasi PFP has already nominated him to be standard bearer. And then by afternoon, sabi nila magkakaroon ng ribbon cutting and blessing ng kanyang new headquarters. So alam mong parang meron ng something big was coming. And yun nga, at 3 p.m. In a very nice and pre-produced sort of an SDE video, in a very short speech, live streamed sa kanyang Facebook page, sinabi niya na nga na he will run for president. I think the audience should just watch kung ano yung sinabi niya. Let's watch this video prepared by our prod team.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. As I speak to you today, the Philippines faces one of the greatest tests in its history. The global pandemic has raced through our country, destroying the lives of people, of families, of entire communities. And if we have learned anything in the time of COVID, it is that each of us, no matter our station, is in need of the help of our fellow Filipinos. We must face the challenge as one country, as one people. Together, we must work towards a shared vision of our country through COVID and beyond COVID, to find a way through this crisis with a common goal, a vision to guide us and to lead us. I know that it is this manner of unifying leadership that can lead us through this crisis, get our people safely back to work, for all of us to begin to live our lives once again. And that is why I am today announcing my intention to run for the presidency of the Philippines in the upcoming May 2022 elections. I will bring that form of unifying leadership back to our country. Hangad kong ibalik ang mapagkaisang paglilingkod ng magbubuklod sa ating bansa. Tayo'y magkaisa at sama-sama tayong babangon mula sa hagupit na pandemya, babangon mula sa paglulugmok ng ating ekonomiya. Let us bring Filipinos back to one another in service of our country, facing the crisis and the challenges of the future together. Join me in this noblest of causes, and we will succeed. Sama-sama tayong babangon muli.
Okay, Lian, question. Kasi everyone rin is talking about the timing of his announcement. Kasi, di ba parang week of COC filing, lahat tayo naghihintay. Meron nga siyang mga parang moves that seemed like he was gunning for the top post, but obviously we only knew today for sure that that was the case. And like, yung iba kasing presidential candidates nag-announce na a month ago, di ba, weeks ago. Si VP Lenny, alam natin na even if she's mulling, she hasn't announced yet. We know that the reason why delayed yun is because supposedly she's doing unification talks with other candidates. Pero si BBM, bakit ngayon lang siya nag-announce? And mayroon ba siyang explanation or even in past interviews about what his decision-making process was like. For example, was he waiting for another politician before making this move?
Pia, this seems also like a unification move on the part of administration, Bets, no? Kasi sinabi niya sa last press con niya, he was really talking to all, as in kay Mayor Sara, kay President Duterte, kay Senator Bongo, sa dalawang faction ng PDP laban. So it seemed, at least to me, that yung delay, yung the weight of it, the guessing game is also para humanap din talaga ng matindi-tinding tandem. And that's what he explained last time. He said na parang tinanong kasi siya kung ready ba siya sa showdown, VP showdown between him and President Duterte. Sabi niya parang malabong mangyari yun kasi magkaalyado naman kami, so mapag-uusapan natin yun. So you know that he is talagang talking with Mayor Sara, President Duterte, and Senator Go.
And Lian, bakit hindi pa siya nag-announce ng VP? And if even if hindi natin alam now, mayroon na bang names being floated as his possible running mate, or will he do it all by himself?
Yung matinding chatter mula kahapon pa ay baka daw si Secretary Mark Villar, who has announced his resignation as DPWH Sec. Pero we've been told from the Villar, camps of the Villar, na baka hindi. So yun pa yung hinihintay natin. And also a factor is he quit Nationalista Party. Hindi na siya nationalista, lumipat na siya sa PFP. But when we asked yung kanyang spokesperson ni Marcos kanina kung bakit siya lumipat from NP, sabi nila they will still maintain close alliance with the with the NP, and the reason why he switched to PFP is para mas maging broad pa yung alliance. And Pia, you reported nga na itong PFP na batang-batang political party is also pro-Duterte, and they have been seeking alliance with hugpong ng pagbabago. So yun yung kung may unification sa part ng opposition, may traces or indication na meron ding unification talk sa part ng administration bets.
Inday, do you have any observations or insights? Baka may questions ka rin for Lian.
Yung tandem, yun ang lahat yata ng kampo tandem, yung the second member of a team ang hinahanap, no? Did he mention anything about Bongo? I know that it's a different party, it's PDP laban, but given that the Marcoses and the Dutertes are allies, did Bongo even factor into the conversation with Bongbong Marcos?
Based on past statements he has made, talagang wide or very broad yung kanyang talks with the PDP laban Kusi faction, including Senator Bongo. So lagi niyang sinasabi na ongoing yung talks, pero it's not stated in clear terms kung ano bang klaseng pag-uusap, if it's formal talks or if it's really courting Bongo or he's courting Sara. So very, very ambivalent yung mga nagiging statement so far. But what's clear is gusto talaga nilang makahanap ng pulidong tandem as much as possible.
And alam natin, biggest issue confronting anything you hear about the Marcoses seeking a national position is yung legacy ng kanyang tatay, the late dictator Ferdinand Marcos. All of the martial law atrocities, human rights abuses, cronyism, ill-gotten wealth. Lian and Inday, can you remind our viewers what are some of the human rights and corruption issues that BBM has refused to acknowledge or downplayed or merely ignored? I mean, para lang ma-remind din yung viewers natin about his accountability on these issues.
I'll go first.
Sige, Lian, ikaw na muna.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember in 2018 when his mother, Imelda Marcos, was convicted of 7 counts of graft. And the decision of the Sandigan Bayan said he, Aimee, and Irene were beneficiaries of at least 2 illegally created and maintained Swiss foundations. And I remember he accompanied his mother dun sa isang sa post-verdict hearing ng Sandigan Bayan. And he really won't accept any question. Kasi ang tanong lang naman, beneficiary ka pala, so you knew, you had knowledge, so he had to be confronted with this. Pero alam naman natin ng mga Marcos, hindi talaga sila mahilig sa mainstream media. They won't be open to being asked in an open forum sa tungkol sa martial law and corruption. So actually that's what I'm looking forward kasi campaign na, so they would be parang kokonti ang pagkakataon nilang mag-evade ng mainstream media, and sooner or later kailangan din nilang sagutin yun. So that's the freshest in my mind, yung pagiging beneficiary niya ng dalawang Swiss foundation kung saan na-convict yung kanilang nanay.
Siguro, Pia, I'm going to go and discuss the human rights situation, no, during the Marcos dictatorship. So there's more than 3,000 were extrajudicially killed. There were 35,000 documented cases of torture, like 70,000 were jailed, no, and that's for starters. And around 70 people remain missing until this day. Siguro I'll just briefly tell you about yung Escalante massacre kasi nandun ako right sa aftermath eh. I'm from Bacolod and that's in Negros Occidental. Nakita nyo, there were like, I think there were more than 20 people who were killed there. They were doing a welcome bayan, and suddenly when the police threw tear gas, one student threw it back because obviously they were trying to defend themselves, and suddenly machine guns, fired and rifles fired. And when we arrived there, the wall behind the rallies, that was the bank, was riddled with huge holes kasi nasa torre yung machine gun nila. And that was like, there were scores of wounded there. There were students, teachers. They said, may mga MPA, but no, there were church people, teachers, students, professionals in that crowd. And that's one of the cases that are every year is being commemorated in Negros Island.
Yeah, and we have to remember that even if Bongbong Marcos might not have been the one who ordered that massacre, the fact that he says human rights abuses during the martial law regime was a lie or lies, diba? We have to remind people rin that, kumaga, parang really putting a blanket over all of these human rights atrocities, and we really have to get answers from him when we confront him as a candidate during this election.
And we're also, we need to talk also about corruption, diba? I mean, like he ended up in the Guinness World Record, of one of the most corrupt leaders in history. And up to now, hindi pa rin inaamin. I mean, his mom, the candidate's mom, keeps on saying, di ba, parang mahirap siya and all that. And there's absolutely no admission of any wrongdoing in terms of stealing from the coffers of the people. And that's something that people have to understand until this day.
May I just add sa discussion ng admission? The reason why the PCGG has been able to recover billions in Marcos ill-gotten wealth ay dahil naman nag-compromise agreement na ang mga Marcos with the government. So while they say now na hindi nila inaamin, those are all lies. Sila yung umamin EDSA era. Kaya nagkaroon, there was an agreement. And actually, yung 2003 landmark ruling ng Supreme Court na nag-award ng $650 million sa gobyerno in Marcos Swiss deposits, may judicial admission doon si Bongbong na sinabi niya na parang doon sa isang agreement hearing na I will be willing if only to put an end to the problems of my family. So may ganon, if you look at court records, may ganon. And it's important to confront Bongbong with this because yung compensation ng mga human rights victims, yung patuloy na pagbabayad sa mga ninakaw na tax ng mga farmers and sugar planters ay manggagaling sa i-recover from the Marcos ill-gotten wealth. And right now, may 125 billion pesos pang hindi nahahanap ang PCGG. And sabi nga ng mga litigators and investigators, tanungin na lang ang mga Marcos, baka alam nila kung nasan.
And this comes with the fact that yung mga Marcoses are also making use of a very large social media network to burnish their image and downplay exactly what you're talking about, the corruption, the cronyism, and human rights abuses. And diba, Lian, you also wrote in your article today about Bongbong Marcos na tinapangan niya yung Cambridge Analytica to rebrand the Marcos family name. We know that talagang the trolls, diba, there are so many pro-Marcos trolls that maraming mga fake news and kumbaga, revisionist memes that are also popping up at our feeds. And I mean, what do you think this parang scenario will play in the elections in next year?
Oh, very big ano, it will play a very big role. Well, first of all, dinenay ni Senator Marcos yung Cambridge Analytica allegation, but that's from the whistleblower herself, si Brittany Kaiser. Yung social media, parang kita mo talaga na that's where Marcos thrives kasi a big factor why he would probably gain admiration is through this information. I don't think merong Pilipinong willingly boboto sa isang tao kung naniniwala sila sincerely na ninakawan sila at pinatay yung mga kababayan nila. But because of this information on social media, marami ang nami-mislead. Marami ang nami-mislead dahil dito.
Inday, we know that si Marcos is pro-Duterte, pro-administration, but at the same time, nakita rin natin siya in certain media interviews being a bit critical of the pandemic response. What do you think, how do you think mag-evolve pa yung public remarks niya, given that there's so much, there's so much tension when it comes to assessing the pandemic response, but at the same time, syempre, Duterte ally siya. So, paano niya kaya gagawin yun?
I think he will continue to criticize on the basis of the pandemic. Otherwise, talagang wala naman siyang ihaharap na pag hindi pa siya nag-criticize doon. But like many of Duterte's allies, he'll probably pointing the blame on some officials, Duque, for example, and all that, and try to steer away from really dragging President Duterte into the fray. I don't think he's going to come out openly to lambaste Duterte. After all, Duterte gave his father a hero's burial.
Right. Salamat, Lian, for those insights and for those reports earlier. Let's move on to the other highlights of the day. Vice President Leni Robredo's office says she is making an announcement on Thursday. Mara, can you tell us more about this? Hey, Mara, we cannot hear you. Sorry.
I apologize. So, ito na yon. The long wait is finally going to be over. Vice President Leni Robredo is finally going to decide on the calls for her to run for president in the 2022 elections. But the advisory from her office and the tweet from her spokesperson, Barry Gutierrez, just said that she is going to make an important announcement. But of course, we've been following her all these years. We've been following her potential presidential bid, and we know that's going to be the topic on Thursday. So it's, in a way, it's still an announcement of an announcement. And, a lot of her supporters have been egging her to run for months, but many of them are growing exasperated that the decision has not come. Because you've seen, the likes of Manila Mayor Isko Moreno, Senator Manny Pacquiao, na the moment they decided, talaga nag-announce na. And so some of them are growing restless because they're not sure if she's running for president. She's not sure if she's running for governor. And when she transferred her voter registration from Naga City to Magarao Town, then that would pave the way for her to run for Camarines Sur governor. But at the time, her spokesperson said it's not that doesn't necessarily mean that she would. So Thursday's announcement is something to watch out for both Robredo's allies and her potential rivals alike. And I think it's important also for us to point out that this, announcement from her camp that she will finally be deciding came on the same day that her rival Bongbong Marcos announced his presidential bid. So, we are told that they didn't plan it, but it's a coincidence that may or may not be good political wise, because Robredo and Marcos are rivals. They went head to head in 2016, and she beat Marcos. She defeated the dictator's son in 2016, and he accused her of cheating because very narrow lang yung kanilang tawag dito, yung kanilang difference in the votes. And so, but in the end, the Supreme Court, which is packed with Duterte appointees, and we know that Duterte, is allied with the Marcoses, uh, tin- uh, um, tinurn down pa rin nila, ni-reject nila yung electoral case. So, if ever Vice President Lenny runs for president, then this is going to be the third time that she will go head-to-head against Bongbong. But, I don't think it can just be a narrative na parang Lenny versus Bongbong because they're not the only presidential candidates, di ba? It's looking like several candidates are going to fight it out, and we're not sure if anyone will be sliding down.
Mhm. And speaking of opposition, no, earlier today we saw former Senator Antonio Trillanes the fourth show up in COMELEC tents, and at first people were wondering, "Oy, ito na ba COC filing na ba to?" But he just accompanied yung kanyang fellow Magdala
Yeah.
official. And we also know that si Trillanes is being floated as a possible VP running mate of Vice President Lenny Robredo's. Can you tell us more about what's happening on that front?
Okay. So, si former Senator Trillanes kasi is among the presidential and vice presidential nominees of Isang Bayan. And yes, he has been, being floated as a possible running mate of VP Lenny should she run. But we have to remember that he wants VP Lenny to run for president so badly that he said several months ago, and he repeated it a few days ago, that if VP Lenny doesn't run for president, he would. And so when people saw him at the COMELEC office, at the COMELEC tent, at the party list COC filing area, everyone was wondering, so ano na, yung galaw kasi ni former Senator Trillanes, hindi we cannot help but connect that kung ano yung magiging galaw ni VP Lenny. So I did write a piece earlier na parang tapos na ba yung waiting game for Bredo's decision, because he did tell me he is filing for candidacy on Friday, but he didn't go on record anymore what position that would be. So we will find out. So his options would be, he could just be if Lenny will run for president, then the options for Senator Trillanes can be just to stage a senatorial comeback, or he can be a VP, or he can still go for the presidency. So we will have to watch out for that.
Inday, do you have any questions for Mara?
Yes, so floating, no, yung kay Senator Trillanes, no, so we don't know. But would it be possible, is there a scenario where Vice President Robredo will run but without a running mate? And if this happens,
Mm.
what message would that send?
Oh yes. So, well, there is a possibility that if VP Lenny will run for president, then she wouldn't have a running mate. Because, sources have been telling us that, syempre, yung kanyang efforts to unite the opposition, kasama na doon, syempre, yung usapan, who's gonna be the running mate of whom, right? Especially yung mga meetings nila closer to the COC filing, yun na syempre yung topic. And the fact that the people she had spoken to had already filed their candidacies, I'm talking about Manila Mayor Isko Moreno and Senator Manny Pacquiao. And tomorrow we are told that Senator Ping Lacson and his running mate, Senate President Tito Soto, are filing their candidacies. And that sort of tell you, okay, they're not going to be the running mate of VP Lenny. So the scenario will be she might have no running mate. And that could be a perceived weakness of a presidential candidate kasi wala siyang katandem. So they can always argue that, in the Philippines naman, the president and the vice president are elected separately, so they have their own mandates. So it's really gonna be up to them how they're going to spin that narrative if ever she doesn't have a running mate. Pwede rin kasing they're leaving room for any of the other potential opposition bets to slide down. Pwede kasi yun eh. And pwede rin naman that they would look for some, titingin na lang sila sa sarili nilang party. It's going to be someone from the Liberal Party, and in the past days to float yung pangalan ni Senate Minority Leader Frank Drilon, who is really the most veteran and the most qualified naman talaga, admittedly, among the Liberal Party officials. But he did tell me the other day that he's really not interested. But as these negotiations go, things can be finalized at the last minute. So VP Lenny, if she runs for president, she might also announce who's going to be her running mate, or she might announce she's just running on her own for now.
Mara, you also covered former Vice President Jejomar Binay, and
Yes.
natalo siya in 2016 and 2019. And what's at stake for him now that he's declared he will run for senator?
Yes, so this is going to be a very important elections for former Vice President Jejomar Binay, because he lost in the last two elections. And actually, nung tumakbo siya for president at tatalo siya, he finished fourth. Masakit yun na pagkatalo for VP Binay because he was leading the surveys for months. And syempre, things that hurt him then was, of course, the months-long Senate probe into corruption allegations against his family. And yun, hindi rin nakapag-adjust yung campaign niya nung lumabas na tumakbo si Duterte at he really changed the game. And nung 2016, first pagkatalo niya yun in years because he has always been winning in Makati. And then in 2019, masakit din yung pagkatalo na yun for him because, bailiwick niya yung Makati eh. He used to be the Lord of Makati tapos natalo siya. Though political analysts believe that he lost because two of his children were, embroiled in this really ugly public fight for the mayoral seat. And so the stakes are high for VP Binay kasi he might not get another chance to stage a comeback after this election. He is also getting older, but this is a good chance for him to run for senator because I think pasok siya within the Magic 12, within the top 15 in the latest Pulse Asia survey. And hindi nag-aaway yung kanyang mga anak. So that's a good thing going for him also. It's only Mayor Abby Binay who has filed for re-election and we are not seeing any indication so far from former Mayor Junjun Binay na tatakbo din siya for Makati Mayor. So that's going to be one less baggage that VP Jajomar Binay will have to face in these elections.
Inday, what do you think of Jajomar Binay seeking a comeback?
It posible pa rin yun, no? Lalo nang he has come out over the past 2 years, he's been rather critical of President Duterte.
Yes.
So, if he's going to bill himself, I'm not exactly sure saan siya talaga papasok na slate na yan, pero right now he's billing himself as, somebody critical of Duterte. And hindi naman siya talaga nag-pro Duterte ever si Dr.
Yes.
Binay. So there's that. I don't know. I don't think young people still remember him as one of the human rights lawyers during the time of the Marcos dictatorship. But he's probably going to try to burnish that track record.
Especially with Marcos running as president.
Yes. And dagdag lang, Pia, during the 2016 campaign, medyo late yun nasabi ni VP Binay at the time, but he did call Duterte an executioner during the last couple of weeks of the campaign. And so, yeah, tama si Inday that, in the past, lalo na this pandemic year, he has re-emerged as an opposition figure to Duterte. And most of his criticisms are focused on the pandemic. So, it's, alam mo yung pandemic, nagiging talaga siya point of criticisms for a lot of the candidates. So, pagalingan na lang siguro ng narrative. But he also, VP Binay is also banking on his experience really fighting the dictatorship because he, at a forum, I think a couple of months ago with other lawyers, sinabi niya mas worse actually yung panahon natin ngayon under Duterte because Duterte didn't have to declare martial law to control all the institutions. So we expect him to be following these same narratives. And he does have, the experience and the track record as a human rights lawyer.
Thank you, Mara, for those insights. And now we will go to Dwight De Leon, who covered also, of course, everyday siya nandun sa Sofitel tents. Dwight, two mayors filed their COCs today, not in Sofitel, but in their local COMELEC offices. Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte and San Juan Mayor Francis Zamora. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes, siguro for context lang muna, I'm covering the local government units for Rappler. So even though nandito ako sa Sofitel, syempre tinatry ko pa rin i-monitor yung mga local races. So first, yes, Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte already filed her certificate of candidacy kaninang umaga at ang kanyang running mate ay si Vice Mayor Gian Soto. So Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte is hoping to get another term in Quezon City. Sobrang familiar na siya sa politics ng Quezon City, but it's not going to be an easy fight heading to 2022. We are expecting na makakalaban niya si Anak Kalusugan, a Representative Mike Defensor, who's set to file his COC in the coming days. And Mike Defensor is currently allied with Winnie Castelo and the Crisologos. So para may alliance sila to try to topple the Belmontes in Quezon City. But Belmonte has some sort of resume with her. While she has faced controversies, let's say, well, ayuda distribution, well, last year, parang, if I remember correctly, there's this mauling of vendor by local officials. She also has some successes in her. She has, or Quezon City was able to improve its vaccination, given that it's the most populous city in Metro Manila. It has also conducted free swab tests for its residents, and it has also created its own molecular laboratory. Other than that, in San Juan, we have Mayor Francis Zamora also seeking a re-election. Remember, in 2019, it was Zamora who toppled the Estrada dynasty in San Juan. Estradas have ruled the city for for half a century. So it's interesting if he'd be able to maintain his grip. The Zamora would be able to maintain his grip in the city. We have talked to the Estradas, Jingoy Estrada and JV Ejercito, if they're filing a candidate to run against Zamora. Pero medyo tahimik pa sila sa kanilang plano. But as of now, they're not ruling anything out.
Okay, interesting. So we'll also have to watch San Juan, Quezon City. I mean, interesting kung maglalagay ng pambate yung Estradas there. Dwight, you're in Sofitel now. Can you tell us more about any interesting COC filing events that you saw there?
Yes. Well, for today, wala tayong nakitang malaking presidential contender or vice presidential contender filing their COCs. And actually, even senatorial aspirant, we do have alam mo yun, siguro notable candidate in the name, or aspirant in the name of Larry Gadon. Of course, this diehard Marcos supporter, Marcos loyalist. It's interesting that the reporters didn't really ask questions after his speech when he filed the COC. When he made his speech, he of course spoke highly about martial law and blamed everything on the EDSA uprising and what happened after. Aside from that, we also had a few interesting party list groups filing their COCs. We have Maharlika party list. They say they're not they're not allied with the Marcoses. And I think it's a different party list from another Maharlika the other day. Maybe favorite yata nila yung Maharlika na word. And they say they seek to represent indigenous peoples. But when asked about because I asked them kung ano yung stand nila sa mga lumads or parang sa nangyayari sa lumads in southern Philippines. Well, they said na hindi naman lahat ng lumads sa indigenous people, or parang lahat yung iba naman sa kanila ginagamit for propaganda. So it goes on to show na parang you're running for a party list post, you're seeking to represent a certain group. Maybe you should have, alam mo yun, better knowledge of their plights, of their struggles. And speaking of that, we also have another party list group. I think this is TGP. I forgot the name. Talino at Galing, if I'm not mistaken. And they said na parang they want to push for environmental causes, ganyan. Jairo Boliedo, our reporter sa labas, asked them kung ano yung stand nila about killings of environmental defenders. And what's funny is the congressman said na he would ban single-use plastics. Something like that. So, sobrang layo ng sagot. Sobrang layo ng sagot dun sa tanong. So, alam mo, it's one of those instances na mapapaisip ka na, ito bang mga tumatakbong to ay sinasabi nila nagre-represent sila ng certain causes, pero gano'n sila ka-gap dun sa mga causes na yon. And then, siguro two other interesting party list groups. Of course, ACT Teachers filed today. Kahapon nag-file yung Gabriela. So, may interesting pattern. So, feeling ko baka in the next few days, other members of the Makabayan bloc would file their candidacies as well. Siguro tigi-isa bawat araw. And last one, we have Kapamilya party list. I asked them kung related ba sila sa ABS-CBN. Because when we talk about Pamilya, we always associate it with ABS-CBN. They said hindi sila associated with ABS-CBN, but that they support the plight of media workers who were retrenched in the wake of ABS-CBN's shutdown last year. And of course, they said that they represent workers from formal and informal sectors, and that they want to push for more benefits for workers, especially construction workers, vendors. So I guess it's interesting to point out kasi ang daming dumarating na party list, ang daming nag-speech, pero hindi lahat nakapagbigay ng mga specific na platforms na gusto nilang gawin when they get elected.
Mm-hmm. Inday, may comments to or insights about the QC and CSS and others that CBOT mentioned?
Okay, QC Mayor Belmonte has the advantage in that she stepped in, remember, during the community pantry, yung gulo noon, no? So meron siyang residual, malakas ang residual goodwill niya doon because she stood up for Patreng Non when she was being, red tagged. At instead of, following that red tagging line, she actually asked Non to sit down with her officials para magkaroon ng mas orderly process doon, no? So she does seem to work well with other groups, no? But mukhang malakas nga yung mga tatlong nagagang up sa kanya. So that's going to be hit and miss there, no? Yung sa mga Maharlika, medyo hindi surprising yan eh. Yung line nila na yung lumad kasi parang propaganda. Remember, not too long ago, very recently actually, meron pang ang attempt na wag nang gamitin, I think that was Lorraine Badoy, wag nang gamitin ang word ng lumad. Kasi hindi raw totoo ang lumad. Parang ganon. Parang nagulat ang lahat ng mga historians na parang saan ang gagaling to. But because the lumad, the word has come to be a symbol of resistance to big development tickets encroaching on ancestral land. They're trying to disappear that word then. So, kaya siguro ganun na lang ang mga sagot rin kay Dwight.
Mm-hmm. Salamat, Dwight, for those reports. And now we move on to other developments. Interesting. PBA star James Yap filed his certificate of candidacy for councilor of the 1st District of San Juan City. And it's not just him. Former PBA teammates are also running. So Delphine Joquino, who is our sports reporter, has the details. Delphine, can you tell us more about this?
So yun, earlier this day, nag-file ng COC si James Yap alongside his former PBA teammates, si Paul Artadi, and then si Don Aliado. They're all running under the ticket of re-election as Mayor Francis Zamora. So yun. Parang may isa pang basketball player actually na running also for councilor, si Ervic Vejandre. So parang makakabuo sila ng starting 5 doon sa sa ticket nila na puro basketball players.
Mm-hmm. Pag nakausap mo ba yung athletes who turn politicians, do you get a sense of why they do this? Why do they turn to politics? Kasi parang every elections nga, palaging may sports personality. And like for these elections, we have no less than Manny Pacquiao, right? A boxing icon seeking the presidency. So ano yung mga insights na nakuha mo from them when they talk about becoming politicians?
Well, si James Yap kasi is talking about he wants to help yung aspiring athletes, and then parang sinasabi niya na he wants to guide these aspiring athletes dahil nga nung paglaki niya wala nga raw parang nag-guide sa kanya. So he's hoping that he will be this parang person or parang supervisor that will guide yung mga aspiring athletes to reach their dreams na maging atleta nga.
Mm-hmm.
So
Ikaw,
yun, sa iba na
sorry.
Yun, sa iba naman, well, ito naman kasi parang feeling ko ito medyo unusual yung pagtakbo ni James Yap. Dahil nga, hindi pa naman siya magre-retire. Parang he said that he still wants to play. And usually, yung mga tumatakbo kasi na athletes or sports personalities sa politics, after na ng career nila, after na ng playing career nila. So, si James Yap, he's planning to juggle yung pagiging PBA player and then if ever na manalo, pagiging counselor.
Mm-hmm. So, Inday, alam mo, parang I'm not sure if I'm wrong, but it seems like it's only in the Philippines that we see athletes becoming politicians. Baka ibang countries din, but 'di ba, medyo common naman yung actors becoming politicians, like even abroad. Pero what is it about athletes you think that for some reason yung kanilang sports career becomes a platform for political careers?
Well, hindi lang dito sa Pilipinas. I think Jesse Ventura in the United States wrestlers have become powerful politicians in their states, no? Meron rin silang doon. But here, at least dito, it's a small city. Easy pickings yan eh. Kilalang kilala na sila eh. They don't need to spend that much to to be known to voters. And ang tao, we're a basketball crazy country, and parang ano eh, parang feel good lang na, okay, I want to be kuya. Of course, that's not exactly what we think governance should be, but, you know, it won't hurt them when they say, I want to be your kuya, I want to help you develop your potentials. It's easy. It doesn't cost them much because it's not, it's a relatively small city. And besides, James Yap is a very good example. Manny Pacquiao, who ran while he was still, go, kaya nga nireklamo si Pacquiao, dami niyang boxing matches, di ba? Naiiwanan na yung Senate race niya. But there's the example, so there's James Yap.
Mm-hmm. Okay, maraming salamat, Delphine, for that report. Let's move on to the other highlights of the day. Inday, the president's spokesman, Harry Roque, was in Cebu, and he had something to say about Cebu City Vice Mayor Mike Rama. Can you tell us more about that?
Oo, medyo nakakagulat eh. Kasi hindi pa naman nagfa-file. Vice Mayor Mike Rama hasn't even filed, his certificate of candidacy. Pero meron siyang slate reveal. O ha, parang ganun, may bago yan, a slate reveal. And Harry Roque was the guest speaker. And may mga song and dance para na event yon. The interesting thing is that Roque said he was there on behalf of President Duterte. Of course, we have no way of asking President Duterte, but Harry Roque is his spokesperson and saying Mike Rama. Pia, I haven't heard yet of any Duterte endorsement for an LGU. Notwithstanding siguro yung mga anak niya, no? But that's a given. But walang ganun ka-clear na endorsement. So, medyo nagulat yung mga tao doon. But Harry Roque has been a busy fellow over the past week. Friday, ay nasa Iloilo siya, Pia. Medyo hindi lang yan umano sa balita. I think he attended a burial, siguro former Congressman Garin, but he also visited Iloilo City Mayor Jerry Trenya. So umiikot si presidential spokesman Harry Roque. Interesting yung kay Mayor Mike Rama because he's going to go up against Margot Osmeña. That's the wife of Tommy Osmeña, who was his mayor from 2001 to 2010. So medyo ito yon, mga old allies facing off each other. Tommy Osmeña is going to run for Congress. Cutie Del Mar, the daughter of the late Raul Del Mar, has filed for the seat of her father, which right now is under si Speaker Velasco ang caretaker ng posisyon na yan. So things are perking up in Cebu.
Mm-hmm. How about in the rest of the regions? Do you see any other interesting races shaping up?
Well, Bacolod kanina, nag-file na ng COC, the billionaire Albi Benitez, who owns the publicly listed what is this name is his Leisure and Resorts World Corporation. Now that's the Filipino partner of the Galaxy Corporation that wants to put up a casino in Boracay, no? Ang si Albi and his entire team did not file personally. They sent representatives. They said they wanted to prevent their supporters congregating, which was a sound decision because naka-alert level 4 ngayon talaga ang Bacolod pataas na pataas araw-araw yung mga new cases niya. But to make up for that, they had this swanky viral virtual event because he owns media companies, you know. So kitang-kita mo yun may 2 windows, may mga ganon sila. So and it was interactive. His supporters were able to reply and to greet him real time there, as well as the other companions of Mr. Benitez. It was also striking in that it showed the 3 Benitez members who want to run for office. So Albi used to be the 3rd District congressman. He was replaced by his brother, Kiko Benitez, incumbent Congressman Kiko Benitez. Both of them are very interested in the housing committee and housing programs. Their father, by the way, was housing under the Marcos era, no? And his very young son is gunning for the mayoralty post in Victoria's City. That's where the biggest central refinery in the island is. If they all win, without doubt, they will be Negros' most powerful family.
Mhm. And from our reports also in the regions now, we saw that the Pacquiaos are running for many, many posts in Gensan. And in Baguio naman, we saw that si current Mayor Benjamin Magalong, who's the tracing czar of the government, is also seeking re-election, right? And of course, alam natin yung controversy, he attended Tim Yap's party. There was a lot of public backlash. So it'll be interesting to see, diba, if he suffered from that, if his votes will suffer from that.
You
So
know,
thank you so
Pia,
much.
he could. Maraming local contest ngayon where COVID is the key
Mhm.
issue. You know, so
Mhm.
that
Yeah,
could hurt him.
not surprising. Mhm. So maraming salamat, Inday. Those were the reports that we saw from the regions. And this brings to a close the 5th episode of In the Running, which caps Rappler's special coverage of the COC filing for the 2022 elections. We'd like to thank our resident analyst, Inday Espina-Varona, and our reporters in the field, Lian Buwan, Mara Cepeda, Dwight De Leon, and Delphine Jokino. I'm Pia Ranada. Join us again tomorrow.